Okay, kids, you ready for a story?
Yeah, Dad. I'm so tired. I can't wait. I can't go to bed yet, though. I need a story.
Okay. Well, I got a perfect story for you.
Okay.
Okay, it's called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh.
Much later.
Hey, wake up. You gotta wake up.
Yeah.
Come on. We're not even a third of the way in the book. Come on.
Oh boy. Okay.
It's getting really interesting though.
Yeah,
Trust me.
I'm listening.
Yeah.
Much later.
Hey. We're halfway through. We are halfway through.
You have to read it?
Yep. This is the best story ever.
Okay.
The greatest, most perfect story there is.
Yeah. All right. I'm listening.
Yeah.
Car thing? Yeah.
Yep.
Much later.
Hey, you paying attention?
I want to go to sleep. It's been 3 hours. Freaking novel, not a story.
Welcome to Samurai Reviews.
Woo! Get the out.
So we are your hosts. We have Jonathan, and then we have me. This review was brought to you by Kazuya Cam Production. Like, comment, subscribe. You can always follow us on our social media at Samurai Reviews 0 on our Instagram. Today's review will be on something kind of different from what we've been watching. Usually it's the more popular summer blockbuster movies. This one is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. We'll be providing timestamps below so you can skip around through our non-spoilers and our spoiler part of the film. Let's get into this review video. Yes, who wants to start first? I think Brett has something to say.
I would like to say
Brett has something to say, right?
This is just kind of like a different. This is going to be a different review for a couple reasons. So before we get started, I wanted to point out those reasons because you're going to see us kind of like start kind of on the same page, and then we're all going to have some varied opinions about this movie. So the first one is kind of covering, it's actually kind of a mini review as well. It's just more of a summary of the points we're about to make, just so you can kind of keep track of everything. The first one is it really does depend on your view of like 1969 Hollywood or Westerns in general. If you don't have an interest towards those, there is going to be a couple of scenes in this where you're just not going to have an interest towards it. And then on the other hand, if that is like, oh, that's much 69 Hollywood and Westerns, then you're going to be like, oh my God, this is amazing. Second one is, if you're not versed on the Manson murders,
Charles Manson,
or the story of Sharon Tate, you're going to be lost at a couple of these scenes, because I went in there not versed on it, and then reading up on it later, I was like, oh, okay, I get what he's trying to do. So, like, I definitely advise you to watch that. There is a documentary called Helter Skelter. A lot of people are suggesting you watch beforehand. Third, if you do not need both an interesting plot with a creative and conclusive payoff, this movie will satisfy you. If you do need that kind of, emotional payoff towards the end, that kind of ties everything together, or the kind of like shows a trend in story throughout. If you do need that, you're gonna be kind of disappointed at the end. Those are kind of the 3 main points you hear. It'll kind of differ in between those. But that's just because we're diverse in our opinions.
Yes.
As moviegoers.
And I'd like to say before we start off this review, I do not want to hear any of you guys say that this was a love letter to 1969 Hollywood.
Yeah.
So that's the thing too, is like they say that it's a love letter towards, the Marine, well, not the Marines, but like the jet fighters and stuff for like the new Maverick, like the new Top Gun 2 that's coming out, but people are not going to critique it as a love letter towards like jet fighters or like jet pilots and that kind of stuff, you know. So why are we going to review a movie that's a love letter towards Hollywood as a love letter towards Hollywood and give it a perfect 10 out of 10 movie?
And there's also a point where like in your review, if everyone's saying the same thing, be different.
You know, somebody can say it's perfect and fantastic. Another person can have that same opinion, but say it in a different way. You know, don't just be a follower. And
independent thought is what we're going for here. But yeah, and then on the other page, we do all like have 10s in this movie. Like I think we all agree there are 10s in this movie. Amazing moments. It's just we differ on what the other moments mean for those 10s. Coming out of this movie, I really was like struggling with giving it any more than a 6 for a couple reasons that I actually previously mentioned. Was like not knowing anything about the Mansons, so like a couple of these scenes were just totally lost on me. I didn't see the point, you know, just not being that interested in 1969 Hollywood. I don't really care. But so coming out, I was really thinking it was a 6, but you know, as I thought and about all the scenes I saw over the last 2 hours, 40 minutes, like I also felt that they kind of were basically just saying, hey, people do things sometimes. But the dialogue is amazing in that. So while the scenes don't catch me because you're just showing someone doing something monotonous, I feel like that wasn't done very well. It can be, and the dialogue definitely made that worth it at times. But there's not always dialogue there to save it. There are scenes that seemed like they'd be special or important upon reflection towards the end, but then they ended up not being. So, you know, the whole time I'm watching this movie and I'm like, oh man, I gotta remember that, or I gotta really pay attention here. Something's gonna happen, and then later it's gonna be like, remember that moment, and I'll be like, oh yeah, that explains it. But there just isn't. That's not the kind of movie it is, but I was just, I guess, used to that from certain Tarantino movies that I've seen before. So I was just kind of waiting for that kind of payoff. Just wasn't there. And so...
Yeah, it was like a worse version of Pulp Fiction, basically.
It is very, like, I see the similarities when people, like, compare it to Pulp Fiction. Like, that makes total sense to me, but it is not as good.
Done well. You might as well just watch Pulp Fiction, which does it way better.
But the thing I liked about Pulp Fiction way more than this was the character depth. Not that these characters weren't interesting. The characters were actually part of the movie that I was most interested in. It was more the story that I had an issue with, just because it was just it was just monotonous. It was a monotonous storyline, or a monotonous plot, and I've seen him do it better before. It just means dull, tedious, repetitive, lacking in variety and interest. And that was pretty much...
monotonous.
It was monotonous. With all that, though, there is a reason why I think Tarantino is a top 3 director. Because of his camera work and his just direction of actors is so good. And perhaps even like a top like caster even. Like that was my favorite part of the movie, was just watching scenes. And there's some scenes where you kind of watch an actor act in a scene, and then you'll really feel like you're watching that movie or TV show, and then it'll cut, because that's like what happens in movie business, and it'll have you kind of straddling the lines of watching a production and being in it. And that's really fun, and those are my favorite grouping of scenes in this movie, and I wish he focused on that a little more. But then there's also times where you're just watching someone walk around town, and it's just not as gratifying to watch that. Yeah, so the acting, I'll get into the acting. The acting is extremely good. It is some of the best acting I've seen probably since Us. Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio do a fantastic job, and I'm not even that high on Leonardo DiCaprio. But like this movie, he did better than I think anyone else could in that role. Although I do think Brad Pitt carried this movie a little bit more than Leo does. Brad Pitt deserves a lot of respect for his performance here, because honestly, he was the part of the movie where I was like, you don't need to change that. Like that's perfect. Then there's some other more specific but non-spoilery examples I'll give you. Is there's some times where Tarantino does a really good job of building tension, and those are the scenes. There's two that I can think of.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and they're just really good at like drawing you in, and you're like, oh man, something's gonna happen. And then the thing is, like, nothing really happens. On one hand, I'm like, that was good, you got me. And on the other hand, I'm like, but I do want something to happen. So like I give him credit, but I also gotta dock him for the same reason. You know, those are some of the issues. It's definitely could be a much shorter movie. Honestly, I think if it was like an hour and a half to a 2-hour movie, I'd probably rate it a lot higher. But because it's just a really roundabout way to get to a lackluster payoff, I can't really rate it any higher than a 6.5. It's as high of a 6.5 as I can give something, because the acting and the directing is a 10 in my opinion. But the story is just full of kind of bland moments that could have been, I don't know, colored up. This movie does have a lot to offer in the form of discussion. Discussion on movies and discussion on their origins, where they've come, what's changed. And that's nice. But it just lacks an emotional element to it. Like an emotional catharsis to the movie experience. It just doesn't really have that. And for me, that's a big part of movies. I go to see movies for that emotional payoff. That's a large part of my rating scale. That's why it's kind of lower. Oh, and one more thing. I think this movie would have been better without the Mansons in it. Without the Manson connection. I think if you cut that out and we just saw Rick and Cliff the whole time, I think that would have been better. It's not that it's bad. It's just there's better stuff. And it's so long.
So, I actually went to watch this movie twice. It's definitely a movie that you do need to know what it is and what story it is before you can really fully. If you don't know what the story is, then I can understand why you'd be kind of bored with it or not, miss out on pieces. Though the pieces that I originally watched, even not knowing all these different things, which I should have known, I don't think that's a knock on Tarantino. Anyway, what is this movie? This is a great what-if movie on the Manson family murders. It's with an emphasis on Sharon Tate, played by Margot Robbie, who does an amazing job with her. It's linked with an emotionally packed story of the made-up characters of Rick Dalton, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, and Cliff Booth, Brad Pitt, who are the two that end up altering this fateful night in 1969 Hollywood and the murders in only a way that Tarantino could. This all with an alluring and immersive backdrop of 60s Hollywood and a nice cherry on top of Tarantino quirks, callbacks, unique camera work, and legendary performances all around. And for these reasons, I happily give this movie a 9 out of 10. So I have a lot more to say and a lot of reasons and everything about this and why I give it a 9 out of 10 out of 10. But I'll get to all that in spoilers. But yeah, 9 out of 10, legendary performances all around. It is a what-if movie on the Manson family murders that ends in a way that, I wish it would have actually happened in real life than what actually, came about. So for all those reasons, I give it a solid 9 out of 10. And I would see it again. I probably will see it again.
So Jonathan, quick question. Was this better just compared to most other Tarantino movies? Which one, where would you rank this movie at?
I'd probably put this just below Inglourious Bastards and Django Unchained. Is my third.
Okay, so what about Pulp Fiction?
He hasn't seen it.
I have actually seen that one fully through.
Okay, so that's probably why.
This one's close to Reservoir Dogs.
Okay.
That was probably the closest one to this. Rating is obviously very different movies, but
that probably could be why our ratings, are lower because we've already seen it done before, and then this is the first time you're kind of seeing it. Would suggest to watch that. I think you would actually enjoy that a lot more than this movie.
Where do you rate it on the list of Tarantino movies?
This movie, oh man, this movie for me is probably the bottom 3 movie.
Yeah, this is the bottom 3.
So I kind of just broke it down, my review a little bit. I'm just going to give you a general description of what I kind of felt of this movie, where there was a lot of maybes in this scene, like what he said or what this specific cut or this specific person represents this or meant that, or there was a lot of like, oh, maybe it could
You
be
have to make
this, or
assumptions.
which is nothing wrong with that. I think the more discussion a movie has, the deeper the meaning it has, and it's probably why you kind of went into that research a little bit and you kind of got more out of it.
I was definitely interested to find out more.
But I felt this movie overall was made in a lame way. That's the best word I can come up with. It was just lame payoffs. There were payoffs now that I'm like thinking and I'm like thinking it through, but they were lame.
Yeah.
I felt like, this overall movie was made in a lame way with lame payoffs. There were payoffs, but very lame. The character development was lame as well. And that kind of follows into the story was lame.
It just isn't really existent.
Yeah, but going to it, let's. I'm going to break it down even further. Entertainment value wise, it was good. It was good. Not the best Tarantino movie, like we said. I honestly like The Hateful Eight way more than this movie. Like we said, it was the bottom 3. I felt it was very poorly written on his end.
Personally, I'm not huge on Tarantino's writing. His directing, like I said, top 3, but I think he's an okay writer.
Yeah,
He has moments.
not his best work.
Yeah.
Little fun fact, he actually spent 5 years writing this story as a book, and then he realized that it would do better as a movie.
And that's why the movie takes 5 hours.
Obviously, it's not his best work, but it's engaging enough to watch it till the end because you're curious to where everything is leading to, but ends in a lame way. So now a positive thing, the camera work. Tarantino delivers basically the same masterpiece shots that he gives all the time in all of his movies. I'm always surprised. I'm always marveled by like
His vision.
Yeah, just the shots in there. It's just really good. The negative side to that is that it's kind of been done from him a lot, obviously because he has a certain style, and would like for him to kind of expound his creativity on like those creative choices that he gets to have as a director. It's what I would like to see from him in his other films. But the thing is that the story that he writes only works with his style that he has with those camera works and camera shots and stuff. So it's not like it's a huge negative or it's a huge positive thing. It's more just like he just fits in that world.
Yeah. I mean, anyone else directs this movie, I'm not giving it a good rating. Yeah, it's not.
It's gonna suck. And the directing choice of this camera puts this movie and all these other movies it just works with the story. And it would not be a Tarantino movie if he just didn't have his style in it with the camera work. So I give him props for that, but I challenge him to just be a little bit,
chill out with the feet.
Yeah. Or like the, those cameras that are attached on the car and they just follow like the car.
Oh yeah, they did do that multiple times in this, and it definitely got repetitive.
And it was the same thing with Pulp Fiction too, that I felt like, and there's a lot of crane shots in both, like most of his movies that I tend to see a lot. But like we said, it fits his story that he creates. So going to the next part that I have dialogue, which is another 10 out of 10 or maybe even a 20 out of 10 because it was very natural. So any dialogue that comes out natural is great. Like 10 out of 10. It was original. It's a new story. It's an original story, and it was creative. The line deliveries were of just most actors in this movie was performed and said to where this movie was entertaining. The performance is the next thing that I have here. It's one of the best acting I've seen from Brad Pitt. First of all, this is the best acting I've seen from him. Another character from Leo's, DiCaprio, that I loved and actually enjoyed. It's another one of his characters that because he does a lot of movies and I don't tend to like some of them, and I do like some of them. But this one, it's in one of my top 3 characters
Did you like The Revenant?
that I have. That I enjoyed Leo DiCaprio's role in The Wolf on Wall Street and The Revenant over this character that he played in this movie. Even Margaret Robbie's character, unnecessary, but major scene that I liked from her that I finally enjoyed, which I'll tell you in the spoilers. But she even just in that scene, she performs in a way that I'm just like, I'm so into the scene, even though it's unnecessary. Leo's character, Rick, right? That was
Rick Dalton.
I felt like more of his scenario or story in this was he was going through like this midlife crisis as an actor, and that's the whole main part of the story. I felt Brad Pitt's character, it was more about acknowledgement, but I can also see that some people can take it as like an atonement theme towards it.
It's very.
That's why that's why I said it's
stretched,
very
right?
maybe. There's a lot of maybes. Like maybe it's this, maybe it's that, but I thought it was more of an acknowledgement. He wanted some
I agree.
acknowledgement. And then I felt Margot Robbie's character was kind of about clarity in her life and her career. She wanted to know if she was a well-respected actor on her own, instead of dating just a popular, like as dating a popular director or even marrying it to them.
I think they're trying to show how she was portrayed in Hollywood. She didn't have a lot of lines. She was just the pretty face in the background. And so that's how they portrayed her, because they're kind of doing it to honor. I think he was trying to honor Sharon Tate's legacy by showing Sharon Tate's legacy. I just feel like it could have been more about Sharon Tate. I wish it was more about Sharon Tate as a person than it was.
Yeah, and with getting a actress like Margot Robbie, like,
and
it would have been 10 times
and
better.
she did so good in every scene. She doesn't even have lines sometimes,
Yeah.
and I'm like, it's amazing.
Like what I said, and we'll get into that more in the spoilers,
Yeah.
where I do have a specific scene for that. You know what? Just keep looking back at it and going through it like tons of times while I was at work. Just in my head, I'm gonna give it a 7. I raised it a 0.5 higher than my actual rating when I came out of the theater, and that comes out to a samurai review
of
7.5. Closest one. Yes, and we're moving on to spoilers.
Spoiler time.
Spoiler time. And I know Jonathan wanted to
I just have a lot of
go
cool
first
stuff
on this
Dinger.
one, so
on this one.
we'll see.
But yeah. So just continuing to talk about the movie here, but Leo and Brad do an amazing job with their characters. They're really best close friends now, and I read some stuff on that they're like, we definitely are down to do another movie.
Yeah.
Basically, in a non-gay movie. And so Rick Dalton, this like actor who's becoming kind of angry just because he feels like his role in Hollywood is just not what it was. And that's kind of, it's relatable in the emotional sense where like, sometimes in life you just don't really feel like you belong anymore, which your prime is kind of over. And so that was really cool to relate to in that sense, and just seeing him go through that. And some of the best scenes with him, there's a part where you're watching this like old Western that he's in, and he forgets his lines throughout some of it.
Mhm.
And that's a cool like directing scene where you get to see like, it seems like a real movie as you're watching it, they're really making this movie, and then all of a sudden it messes up and he's like, line. And he gets really angry and he freaks out in his like little trailer. And he's like, I studied these lines and now I make look like an idiot. And it's really funny, but also kind of sad at the same time, where it's like, he's trying his best, but he's just not as good as he was. But then this little girl who steals the show, I think her name of the thing is
Margaret or
Mary Bell.
yeah.
She kind of comes up and kind of saves the day for him, and she's like, that's the best acting I've ever seen in a later scene that he performs with her. So that was cool to see that kind of that arc and to get him back on track. It's just performed wonderfully. Brad Pitt's character, Cliff Booth, being the stunt actor, his kind of relatability is, sometimes the things you see in the that people don't see are what kind of make a movie. So his character, which I don't think a lot of people touched on, but what I got from him is that he's just the guy that he makes the movie, what the movie is, but people don't know about him too much, and he's just kind of in the background.
They don't appreciate or acknowledge.
Yeah, and so I feel like that's kind of his dilemma with things, and he's like, they kind of go, he's like this war vet. He has some interesting past, and his whole thing is he killed his wife and got away with it. Cliff Booth gets kicked off the set of like, and he's not on the set anymore because of the main stunt coordinator, and his wife doesn't like him in particular, so he doesn't like him, and so I kind of kick him off because Leo's character, he goes, oh, it's the same guy who was on, I was trying to remember these names of these shows, the name of the production, but it's this production they're doing, and he's like, it's the same director, the stunt coordinator that did that, so don't even worry about it, because Cliff Booth's like, hey, dude, I'll be around, try hang around, and Dalton's like, nah, there's no point, it's the same stunt coordinator, and so then he goes to fix his roof and everything, but he imagines, or he goes back in time to what happened and why he got kicked off and why no one likes him. And it's a very funny scene.
It is.
Got some action to it as well, which is cool.
I thought it was fake, and I liked that it was kind of an imagination, because I thought he was kind of romanticizing about how he was at like fighting, or like, I could take Bruce Lee, so he's kind of like, and then Bruce Lee's there, and then he's all talking,
He's like a war.
and I take him out and I throw him into a car. I thought it was a romanticized version of how he sees himself as a stuntman, and him kind of reliving the glory days because he didn't have a job. I'm not saying this is it. That's the reason I actually liked that scene.
Okay.
But if it's real, that takes that kind of romanticizing away, and that kind of grandeur of his view of himself that I thought they were trying to go for, and also kind of makes just Bruce Lee a total twat, and that kind of sucks, and he deserves some more respect than that. I thought that was just his version of thinking of him just to make himself feel like a stuntman again.
Now, on to Margot Robbie. She also absolutely nails the role of Sharon Tate in this. And in the words of Margot herself, it sheds light on the life of Sharon Tate, while most people just kind of remember her as being the murder victim of the Manson family murders. You get to see her live, and kind of just like her personality quirks and everything, and every time she's on screen, you're definitely drawn in, just like with the rest of the characters. That's amazing. And then at the end, what the payoff of this movie is, which these you don't get, is that the payoff,
I get it, it's just
is
not
that
a good one.
the Manson family are the ones that get like butchered, instead of the Manson family are the ones that do the butchering, which is, great to see, and I wish that is what actually happened. The other thing that's throughout this movie is you get to see kind of Hollywood, and all the music is spot on. They have actual like radio hosts and like commercials that were from back then that they actually just pulled straight from like archives and stuff. You get to see they actually set up like Hollywood Boulevard, or one of the main drives there, like it was in the 60s and everything. And so it's very real, very cool to see if you're into like the Hollywood type phenomenon. You really feel like you're back in that era, and that's what's really cool about it. So that's all kind of the great things about this movie that I loved. Now, these are the things I wanted to see in the movie. I would love to see more of Margot Robbie and Sharon Tate, which is what they said as well, and I do agree with that. I think she should have played a bigger role in it, and I would have loved to actually, Brett had said this and I agreed with him, but having her play a role in the end fight with the Manson family would have been even cooler. So yeah, I think that was a big missed point by him, Quentin Tarantino, I mean, and I think that would have made the movie a lot better. I would have also liked to see more at the end, which is kind of, I want to see more Rick, more Cliff, and more Sharon Tate. So like this kind of involves all of that. The bad, there was nothing bad in this movie for me. There was nothing I was like, I absolutely hate this. This should not be there. There's things that should have been added, but nothing that I would subtract from it. I like the length of it. There's lots of little extra bits I can throw into here too. They're like callbacks to Tarantino movies, just little things like red apple cigarettes I've seen throughout lots of the movies. There's a scene where one of the roles that Rick Dalton plays, he's like flamethrowing these Nazis, which is kind of a throwback to Inglourious Bastards. The backdrop in some of the Old West scenes is the set from Django Unchained. Details in Hollywood, there's lots of real buildings, landmarks that are put in there that were really there. The camera work is great. One of my favorite camera works is actually they have like a camera in the backseat of cars, that you see them like driving around. The comedy, which no one's mentioned this yet, so I'll definitely mention this in closing. But the comedy in this show is really, really good. All of it lands. None of it's like outlandish, where it's just like laugh out loud funny for the most part. But it's realistic humor that is just, it fits what it is. A great, unique movie that only Quentin Tarantino can really pull off the way he does.
I agree with that. The acting in the Leonardo DiCaprio, Rick Dalton scenes where you see him acting, and that's kind of what I was talking about earlier, where they have you straddle the line of watching the production and being in it. And I think those scenes are like what makes Tarantino so good. And that was definitely a 10 scene. Just like kind of because it's so like elongated and you're like in it for a while, and then it'll just cut abruptly because it's a production, and he'll just forget his line, and then it'll just go like you'll be like, oh shit, that's not the movie.
That's not the movie. And then
this
like,
is the
okay,
movie.
Back to one, and then like, take the camera back to like
and then
where
they
it
run
started,
through it
and then it
again.
goes again.
And it was really cool. And also, like, he was reading those lines earlier, so it's cool to see those lines. Kind of, like, that was the lines he was reading for. So I like that kind of that's the kind of tie-in stuff I was expecting in the end. But so that was definitely a good scene. The scene with the kid, where he's talking to the kid, was definitely one of my favorites too.
Oh, I did have one scene I forgot to mention.
Okay, go for it.
Sharon, one of my favorite Sharon Tate scenes is when she goes to see her.
No,
the movie
that's
that she-
mine.
Yeah.
Go take it away
The movie
from
that
me.
she plays in. I won't say too much about it. But it's just really cool to see. Like, it's her first kind of movie that she sees her name up on the billboard, and it makes her kind of all giddy and excited. Yet the people at the movie theater, like, she's not a big name either, so they don't even know it's her. And so she's just kind of like, oh yeah, it's me, and she doesn't want to be too like arrogant about it, but at the same time she's like, oh yeah, it's me. I was in this movie, and so it's just kind of cool to see that.
It was so weird. I actually like the first half. I was like, so is that not her?
Yeah.
Just the way they were playing it.
That actually is Sharon Tate. That's actually the real.
I know. But like the
right?
first half, I was like, wait, because she was like, someone's like, wait, you were in Valley of the Dolls, and she was like, yeah, I was in the Doll Valley thing, and I was like, so she wasn't.
That was a little confusing.
It was very confusing.
I actually don't know that one either. I'll put them.
Yeah,
Wait,
maybe.
continue.
Yeah,
That was
maybe
just
there's
one
a reason.
thing.
I just remember watching it. I was like, I thought she was Sharon Tate.
Oh,
So, actually, I'll go over two scenes. One that led to the ending scene, and one that was the ending scene. So the first one was, there are moments in this movie that have excellent tension. First scene was when the first time Brad Pitt goes to their camp, kind of, where he used to work for Bounty Law, and he's going to check on like the old groundskeeper guy. I don't know, George. Yeah, and the whole scene, it's like this creepy tension because it's the sex cult that he's on, right? And so you see him walking through this, and he's like definitely knows something's up. He's like really worried about George. They're kind of trying to hide it. And another line delivery option was like, he was like, where is he? And then the girl was like, he's taking a nap. But then he ends up taking a nap. Like, she said it in a way where it was like, that's not what he was doing. But he was taking a nap.
Yeah,
that was his nap
he was
time.
just dead in the room. or
Yeah.
That's what they're alluding to, but yeah, it's not.
But that's
actually.
a weird way to like set that up. And then the whole time you're like, oh man, they're gonna like jump him. Like there's some trap set, something. And it goes through the whole scene. And he meets
something. He's
George.
like, hi
and
George.
He's like, hey.
Yeah, I'm
and
just
George is
checking
like,
up on you.
Yeah, I'm fine. Go away.
Yeah.
He's like,
Okay, see ya.
And then he leaves. And I was just like, that whole scene, I felt so like suspenseful. And then the payoff, I liked it because
It's like a false.
it was like, you got me. Like, I get that. But the thing is that this happens kind of the whole movie, except towards the end. But yeah, it was just one of those scenes where it was like really well done. And then I was just like, that was so good. But now it means nothing. It was just one in a bunch of those, and it just got too much at one point. But the other one, and this was definitely my favorite scene because I started punching, was the last scene where they go to kill Rick Dalton and Cliff. And they kind of show up, and then the dog obviously like takes a few out, and then he's like on acid, like throws a dog can into this lady's nose, and then the other lady charges him, and he basically just smashes her head into a bunch of objects around the house, and it's super like Tarantino, super like fun, violent.
Oh, the Italian
funny.
wife punches.
Yeah, the Italian wife punches her, and then it's like, and then she gets back up, and she's like, oh, and she's like, oh. And that
the
was
gun goes off, the
that was
dog
a
gets
scene-
scared, the dog runs away. And
Yeah,
runs
yeah.
away with
And then-
like the Italian wife, and then
the lady,
Brad Pitt just takes care of like the rest of them.
two of them, and then one of them like runs out of the glass because she's just gotten like her face bit in by the
dog, yeah.
and she runs out of it, like smashes through a glass window to Rick Dalton, who's in the pool, and he's like, what the f-?
Yeah, he's listening to music, just chilling.
And then she like has a gun, and she's in the water now, and she's like waving around. 'Cause he's a
The
pool.
gun, yeah.
And he's like gets out, and then he goes and gets the flamethrower and comes back, and he's just like, just like lights are on fire, and then instead of going under the water, she just goes on fire for like 10 seconds, and I'm like, just go under. And then finally she goes under when she dies. I was like, what an idiot.
The thing I liked about that is because they did reference the flamethrower part
Yeah, that was
in the beginning, and that was a good payoff in the end
was-
to
yeah, that was
just burn
good.
the girl.
Fight scene that ensues is definitely worth it. It is definitely the climax of this film. It is definitely the supposed payoff.
No, the payoff is that Sharon Tate doesn't get killed.
Yeah,
That's
because he kills them.
Yeah.
And I thought it was good. It was just the lead up to it. Didn't make it pay off in the way that I think he intended, or the way that the full weight would be felt from that scene. Maybe if we got to know Sharon more, and then they save her, that might have had more of an impact. Something like that. But overall, the scene is fantastic, and it's super fun to watch. And that's one of the scenes that I would totally like. I'll probably YouTube it
And watch it again.
and watch it again just because it was like that fun. But it's just not worth 3 hours. The bad is the kind of what I'm saying is like it's not a lot for 2 hours and 45 minutes. There are tons of great scenes, but you have to sit through a lot of okay scenes. And I agree, there's nothing that I hate in this movie. There's just a lot that I am indifferent towards in this movie. And that's what's weighing down my score. It's not things I hate, it's just like things that are just fives. But things are 5 and 4s, and they weigh down all those 10s that are in the movie. And then also in relation to Pulp Fiction, we kind of pointed on this, is the characters don't have the same sense of intrigue as a lot of... They're likable, but that's like about it to it. And there's nothing like specific that you're like, oh man, that's a really interesting kind of characteristic that they have. How are they going to deal with that? It's more just like, they're too cool. They're two cool guys, and that's about it to it. So it kind of makes it seem more two-dimensional or boring than most of his other characters. The parts where they do have that special characteristic is in the dialogue when they're talking to each other, and that's when you kind of feel that special like friendship element of it. But when they're off on their own, it just kind of like, it's their interactions with others that makes the movie good. But there's a lot of them just not interacting, which is fine to an extent, but I think it kind of draws out a little too long. And yeah, it just hasn't like it lacks an element of gratification at the end. So that's kind of like, if your gratification is someone didn't die that died in history, you won't have that problem. But for me, that's not really enough, especially when I don't know anything about her, or most people don't know anything about her. Like Sharon Tate is not a household name. We can all agree on that. To wrap up, like it's definitely a movie I suggest you see on account of certain characteristics that you have. If you have enough time, would be the first one. It's a long movie. Also, you kind of have to appreciate 1969 Hollywood to an extent, and the Manson murders. I would definitely, if you don't know the Manson murders, I would absolutely read up on them or watch Helter Skelter before going to see this movie, or else you're going to be like me, just absolutely confused.
Short and sweet. Scenes I liked. Fight scene with Brad Pitt and Leo. Loved the chemistry between the two actors, Brad and Leo. They were just amazing. Every scene that they were in, kind of talking together. Them even commentating on the Leo's TV show that he did. was good. I loved every kind of behind the scenes of Leo's character. They showed his TV show of like the torch, and then they're like, oh, he had to go into training for the torch and stuff.
Yeah.
And he's there and
like,
behind the
"That's hot."
scenes, he's like, this is way too hot. Is there a way where we can cool this down? And they're like, it's a flamethrower. So that was great. I also liked his ad in the end with like the apple.
Red apple.
Yeah, the red apple cigarette one,
Yeah.
where he's all like,
He does the whole commercial,
Yeah.
like, oh, these are so good.
and then he's like, oh, these are disgusting, you know, after they call cut, and he's like, I have a fucking double chin, you know, why would you even pick this poster? I have a fucking double chin in this on this poster. And
Those are the best scenes when it goes from reality to that acting, and I love that. And then I feel like I got that in the middle for a little bit. And then the rest of it, I was like, oh, man.
But I still liked his way of acting he did, even with like the Bounty Law. Like you see those episodes of him in Bounty Law, and I'm all like, this is enjoyable.
Yeah.
Leo's acting his way to that acting on what they did.
Yeah.
The
To Bounty Law,
acting
not
and
to his
stuff.
character that he's acting.
Which is great.
Yeah.
I loved it, and it was
It's
it
like
was
multiple
such a
movies
it was,
in one.
Yeah, it was a good performance, and I just hands down Leo did a great job. Jonathan mentioned that I also liked was with Margot Robbie's character when she went and watched her own film, and she was reacting to all of the audience basically laughing or cheering her character on. I enjoyed that. The scene that I disliked were all the other Margot Robbie scenes. Not that she did like a bad job. It was just
They're pretty to look at.
Right.
Pretty scenes,
Yeah.
but
it was nothing special with the story, and that kind of gets it to where at the end where you get that lame payoff, and then you're just all like, well, that was all those other shots weren't really necessary.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of that's very disappointing, because you did waste all that time just watching all those like scenes and stuff.
Yeah.
And that wraps up our review video on this. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Like, comment, subscribe. Definitely subscribe. Share it with all those.
Yeah, like or comment if you want, but you have to
subscribe. Yeah, you
Yeah.
have to.
Yeah.
It's mandatory.
And
Or
leave,
no one.
leave your hateful comments in the bottom, because I rated it a 6.5. I welcome it.
Yeah.
Bring it. I don't care.
We'll see you next time.
Perfect.